us stand firm against any and all arbitrary authority that threatens the personal sovereignty of one or all. That which will not bend must break, and that which can be destroyed by truth should never be spared its demise. It is done. Hail Satan.
Class is in session. Welcome to Satanic Study Hall, everybody. We are back at it again. What's up, everybody? I said, hi. What's up, everybody?
What's up, Bill?
Oh, okay. I was going to say, what the fuck's going on?
We're here.
I'm like talking to myself here. What's good? What's good? February weather. It is snowing outside.
Yeah, what the hell, Bill? We were supposed to have a school day.
There's business to be done.
Call me up. Principal Ben hit me up, and he's like, where are you? Get your ass in here.
My name is Bill. I am a member of the Satanic Temple and also a member of Love City Satanists here out of Philadelphia. And today I am joined by...
Hi, my name is Dennis Morningstar, and I am a member of the Satanic Temple. And it's great to be back, guys.
It's great to have you back, Denny. I am Veronica the Valedictorian, and I am heavily aligned with the 7 tenets of the Satanic Temple.
And today in class, if you haven't picked it up off of the title of our episode, because I'm pretty sure his name's going to be in there, we are joined by criminal defense attorney, musician, co-host of The Devil's Dispatch on TST TV, and TST advocate, Stu de Haan. Welcome, Stu.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Absolutely. It's fucking awesome to have you in class. Before we dive in, though, and get to know you a little bit and talk a little bit about the legal stuff that's going on in the world of Satanism and TST in particular, Dennis, what is our email address?
Oh, of course. It's satanicstudyhall@gmail.com.
And how often do we check that email address?
Multiple times.
Way too fucking much. So that's the easiest way to get our attention. And if you don't already follow us on social media, we kind of dive in a little deeper later in the episode, but we are on Facebook and Instagram and Twitter and Twitch and YouTube. And again, yes, our Discord. And I saved the Discord for last because we do have a Facebook community that's called the Goat Farm, and that's still alive and kicking. It is at the mercy of eventually getting motherfucking zucked, as I like to say, but it's going to happen. But we do, like I said, we have the Discord available, and I personally, Discord's starting to grow on me. I'm happy with it. I'm having a great time. It's pretty super organized. It's flowing well, and people are flowing in pretty steadily. What's your favorite thing about Discord, Dennis?
My favorite thing about Discord? Probably that I can literally chat about any subject I want without an interruption of someone completely changing the subject. Like I can go to one channel and talk music. I can go to another channel and talk weed. I can go to one channel and just have a general conversation. There's the venting channel, the safe space. Like we got all kinds of stuff, the ritual chat. We even have a recovery chat, so anybody who's in the same position as me, you've got a place to go and, seek other addicts to help with, shit that's on your mind, whether that be burning desires or anything of the sort. So yeah, we've got all kinds of stuff over at Discord. And it's just growing, as he said, both with members and as our channels go. We're kind of merging some together while expanding others. So that's what we got on Discord.
One of my favorite things that's going on right now that I haven't fully taken advantage of outside of hijacking that shit is, Veronica and Keen's and the Goat Farm's art room. I don't know. I've lurked a couple of times, talked to some of the members that have been in there, And I was just going to ask Veronica, can you tell us a little bit about that and then what's kind of happening in there? Because it seems to be growing, and some of the art projects coming out of that are pretty impressive.
Yes, I can talk a little bit about it because it is my favorite thing currently about Discord. I still have yet to get fully acquainted with Discord, but so far the art room has been the best part of it for me. So thank you so much, Dennis, for showing me how to transfer our little Facebook rooms art class art room over to Discord, because it seems to be becoming just as effective. So it's just this weekly art room that we start in Discord, and it's whoever wants to pop in at their convenience. We usually do it on Sundays from 2 to 5. And you don't have to stay that long. You can pop in whenever you want, and you're not even required to talk. Just work on something artistic. You can write. We do have a little bit of discussion that go on. You can show your art projects to everybody who's in there just to get a critique or some feedback. And it's always just a really nice, chill environment. I think when Kian and me formulated the idea on Zoom, we were the idea was to go back to coffee houses where you can just sit there and sketch. And in Kian's case, he would sit in the pub, have his drink, and do his art. And we're kind of missing that in this pandemic climate. So the art room really provides an alternative to what we're all missing in this time of isolation. And I'm having a lot of fun. Sarah is awesome. We're at the point where we're actually making some crafts and art pieces for each other. So I'm really, really happy with how this is going. It started out as just a really, kind of silly, small idea. And I'm so appreciative of everybody who really got enthusiastic about it. So thank you, Dennis, so much for helping me set that up in Discord.
Oh, you're absolutely welcome.
Thank you, everybody who's been contributing. Thank you, Dennis, for just making Discord all happen and taking that whole project on. We do also have a Patreon that's available at patreon.com/Satanic Study Hall. If you would like to consider supporting this rotating bench of fucking degenerates that hits you with episodes a couple times a month. Now, speaking of that rotating bench, that is who we are. Satanic Study Hall. We're a podcast. We talk about Satanism from its inception to modern day. We cover news, entertainment, we do music reviews, book reviews, and as Johnny likes to say, we pretty much talk about anything satanic. If it's in the news, we cover it. And we try not to completely look through just the lens of, a member of the Satanic Temple. And as Principal Pan reminds you in every episode, we're not affiliated with the Satanic Temple. We don't speak for anybody else but ourselves. We don't represent anybody else but ourselves. I think also in regards to that, it is important to gain perspective and learn about things that might not be so, friendly to your interests, and look at the other side and look at other perspectives. That's the only way to, I think, to grow and move your intellect on from what it currently is. There's really no time in this world to allow you to be lazy, because then you become vulnerable to bullshit. And we'll get more into that later on. So a couple more things to talk about. The Stephen Bradford Long Normie Satanism episode. That was pretty fucking good. And I want to shout out Father Al for that entire Normie Satanism journey. With part 1, talking to Stu's friend and confidant, Mason Hargett, gave us a real good, and, with all of our listeners, everybody, he was the first one everybody went to from a normie Satanist perspective. It was the bow tie thing. Just, he definitely resonated with a great deal of people within the community, whether they were a normie Satanist or not. And we're going to talk a little bit more about Hail Satan as we get to know Stu. But definitely I wanted to thank Stephen for joining us for that episode. All right. So, all right, Stu, spotlight is on you. It's time to get to know you a little bit. I'm sure our listeners, maybe they're not familiar with who you are. So we're going to kind of go back in time a little bit and kind of progress to who you are today. But can you kind of take us back to your childhood and let us know, what life was like growing up? Whether, you're comfortable talking about family structure, religion, any crazy ass traumatic events that shaped you, things that kind of helped mold you into who you are today.
Yeah, sure. So I was a military kid, military brat, as they say. So we moved around a lot. My dad was a Dutch immigrant. And then I ended up going to high school and middle school and some of elementary school in the Netherlands. And I went to a NATO school, so I was with all Canadians. And I moved to Arizona when I was 18, just because I got in-state tuition, because that's where my dad trained when he was getting his green card. So that's how I ended up here. So I ended up at University of Arizona in Tucson, where I got a degree in political science, and then I went to Gonzaga Catholic Law School.
Okay.
As far as religious background, my dad he calls himself a Catholic. He's an atheist. My mother comes from a Jewish family, but was raised Lutheran, and now she's Buddhist. We're kind of a pluralistic family. So, being religiously different wasn't a thing in my family.
Now, did you have a personal relationship with God growing up or at any point in your childhood, or?
Well, no, I kind of had experience when I was here's my experience when I was 9. It was in Baptist, Georgia, Fort Benning. I wasn't allowed to play with the other kids because I was the unchurched child, and that pretty much solidified that for me. But I just never attended church or anything like that after about that age. So
from being neutral to gearing towards, now, was there a progression into atheism and then Satanism, or was there kind of just indifference and, just an evolution of personal beliefs, and then Satanism kind of came? And
yeah, how did we get from a Catholic law school to Satanism?
Oh, well, that was a long time coming. So, I mean, I guess the best way to put it was agnostic. For most of my upbringing, I was always into metal and stuff. So like the imagery and my introduction to Church of Satan and all that stuff was a lot younger, but I didn't really latch onto it at that point, or identify as a Satanist or anything like that. And again, I would say I was kind of getting into the territory of like kind of a firebrand atheist in a way, because of, the religious right and the shit that happened to me when I was Baptist country. And, as we've all seen, whenever you see a religious liberty law, religious freedom, liberty, whatever they want to call it, law passed, it means someone's about to lose their rights. And that always pissed me off. So after law school, I went into criminal defense. But I didn't get into the Satanic Temple stuff till like 10 years later. But as far as my introduction with the Satanic Temple and starting to identify as a Satanist was early on in TST, when there were like maybe 2 chapters. It was like Seattle and LA and St. Louis. It was like a handful of chapters at the time. And I saw the Baphomet drawing that Lucian did for Oklahoma. It wasn't even a monument yet. It was just a drawing. And so it was around that point that I started openly identifying, after lots of research and all this stuff. That's when I started openly identifying as a Satanist. Was actually with TST, but it was like really early on in TST. And then I did since then, since before that, I'd known a bit about the Satanic Bible and all that stuff, but I really got more learned in it at that point, I'd say. And that was all before I had any idea that I would get this involved.
Yeah.
Now, after you did start becoming that involved, and even coming from like a pluralist family, as you put it, did they have any reaction to you formally coming out as a Satanist or starting to identify publicly as a Satanist?
My family, it was like, of course you fucking did. Like, I don't know. I think at this point, it was par for the course. They saw me through my anarchist days and my socialist revolutionary days, and they saw me doing this kind of activism and that kind of activism. And then I got out of that completely, but it was kind of a steady path towards this. And actually what got me into Satanism, I should probably add, this is important. I say a lot of people, they come from the romantic literature, a lot of people.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
We're into the Paradise Lost route or whatever, the satanic school, as they call it. And then a lot of people came from the occult route. So, you've got your Church of Satan converts or what have you, or people that were just generally in the occult. My path was actually from political science. I studied a lot about Mikhail Bakunin and some of the old Russian anarchists who identified as Satanists, kind of in the same way TST does. And it was kind of this counter myth, socially and politically in Russia during the Russian Revolution, where that was their method of fighting the Orthodox Church. It scared the shit out of them. So they all identified as Satanists and kind of owned that label, is my understanding. So
really interesting.
That was kind of how I went in this path from when I was much younger.
That's super interesting. Wow. Okay.
Yeah,
I need to look into, like, as big as a Russian Revolution, enthusiast as I am, I need to look into that aspect of it. I know, the generic information about taking on the orthodoxy in the middle of the revolution, but I didn't know that there was like a whole, a school of intellectuals that identified specifically as Satanists to take them on. That's incredible.
So, Mikhail Bakunin, there's a book. It's a short book. It's kind of disjointed. It doesn't make a lot of sense. It's called God and the State. That really had the first quotes that I saw in my much younger times. And then there's a book called The Sorceries and Scandals of Satan that I think heavily overlooked in the satanic milieu. And that was another kind of socialist slant to it, where the Satan was the force that kind of fought the government during like the robber baron days and all that stuff. So I do think that those type of books are important in the satanic milieu, but I don't think they're as talked about as the occult stuff.
Perfect. Time for some more book reviews. Thank you for doing my job for me, Stu. Oh, this is great.
So you talked about being around, and you've worn a good deal of hats in regards to your work with the temple and involvement. So just based on some of our research, now we know you're involved from a legal aspect and whatnot. Now, what are some if you could, like, what are some of the many hats that you have worn? We're familiar with chapter head, lawyer. Can you tell us about other things that you've been involved with, and any other like formal titles you might have had?
Yeah, sure. So we did what happened was there was a forum that Lucian was on when in his Facebook days, which were short-lived at this point. But he said, he just wrote in one of the forums, like the original official TST forum, which there have been several on Facebook, but he wrote, "Is there anyone in Arizona willing to do something?" And I was a newer member at the time, and I was like, "Sure, what you got?" And he's like, "They do these invocations in Phoenix. Would you be willing to give this a shot?" So Michelle Short and I on that thread, and it was just so fun because we had like hundreds of friends in common at the time, but we had never met. Like I didn't know who she was. And we got together and decided we were going to do this, what we started calling the invocation campaign, which there was a guy in Florida that had done it at the time. And I think there was a guy in Colorado who had done it, or that might've been after we did. But in Arizona, it became an entire thing. So, as you probably know, they showed a little clip of it in the Hail Satan documentary. But this was that was a 6-hour meeting that they had. So this got international attention, which was shocking to us. We thought maybe statewide news. We didn't realize what a big deal that would be. But it was after this heavy media campaign, and Lucian Bear didn't really know us. We were like the two randos from Arizona at the time. But we had been starting a chapter, and we had people that were interested, and all this was happening when we were putting it together. But we wanted to get involved. I mean, it was a legit thing. Like, we really wanted to give the invitation. We didn't want it to blow up like this. We really didn't. And that case is still litigation, but this is all, the whole history of this thing is pretty well known at this point. But it was at that point that we became chapter heads. There was no formal process at the time. National Council was brand new. Because of my legal background, and my connection with other people like Lucian, some of the chapter heads, because again, we were very small. I mean, there were like a handful of us at the time, and I eventually got a national council after a year of being chapter head. So I was on national council for a while, and then I had to leave that because at this point we were in litigation, both Arkansas and in Arizona. That's how that went down.
Now, how fast did that all happen? I mean, it almost seems like a domino effect type situation where, one interaction, one conversation, one experience kind of, accelerated another. But from, just the Facebook forum, like you had mentioned, to, the initial introduction, Lucian comes to Arizona, chapter status happened. Like, what was that time frame like?
That was like 3 years though. I mean, between when we did the invocation and had chapter status, that wasn't exact. I can't even say when the time period was, because the corporate structure wasn't figured out then and all that. I did chapter about a year before national council, and then I was on national council for a few years, 2 or 3 years. I don't even know, because some of the stuff was overlapping. But yeah, once I got the litigation going, I had to pull out of all that stuff because it was just too time consuming.
No, I could fucking imagine just having a podcast about Satanism and the Satanic Temple, and then add all that shit. Like I've been seeing, some of the workings.
I was running the firm too. I had my own law firm, and then I had the.
I was just gonna say layer, your obligations as an attorney on top of all of that outside of temple related stuff, and it's a recipe for not a lot of sleep. With your involvement and your affiliation and all your experience, and just, all the passion that you've put into, the temple, the tenants, and, what is special to you about the Satanic Temple and the Satanic Temple's advocacy? And what about this community is worth fighting for?
What I like is how it has this broad kind of compass. So in my mind, I think of it as like, there's an activism component. There's an arts and culture component. There's the literature component. And to me, that's all of these things together, and especially the community, is what makes it a religion. So, I've always said that this was kind of the religious structure, even though it's non-theistic. So you don't have like the typical monotheistic religion in that you do in most of the United States. It still has all of those features as one thing. Even though it came from very small roots, it still always had all of those components. I think this alternative to mainstream religion is not only important, but it's necessary. And you'll see in this country where there is a heavy religious privilege towards, the Abrahamic religion, especially Judeo-Christian, whatever you think of that term, that is what religion is. When people say you're religious, they think you're one of those religions, period. That's what religious means. And I think that this has left out a lot of people. And then on top of that, it's left out the entire non-believer community. But in my opinion, religion is part of the human experience. From every corner of the world, wherever humanity started, there's been religion, and there still is. It's never stopped. It's been contiguous, and they all built on each other at a time. And to me, this is an evolution of something that's always existed that I think no one's really done before. Even other satanic religion hasn't done what TST has done. And to me, that is worth fighting for.
Very well said. And that's, that seems to be, a reoccurring theme in a lot of the conversations that we have, when we ask, members of the community, regardless of their involvement, that same question. And it goes beyond standout value. It's motivation and drive. So, all right, we're going to press pause on the getting to know Stu. And, at this point, I think it's a perfect opportunity to take a quick bathroom break and then come back and dive into yet another book discussion with our valedictorian, Veronica. And what book are we going over this week, Veronica?
We are doing The Devil All the Time by Donald Ray Pollock.
And Belial needs to take a piss as well.
Go let him out in the snow.
Yeah, there's fucking 4 inches out there now. All right, we'll be right back.
I just got a library book, and I'm so excited.
Hey everybody, what can I say? I sure am glad you came my way. Let me take a minute or two and I'll introduce a book to you. Let's go. Let's go.
Reading is fun for everyone.
Hail Satan!
Hail Satan, indeed. Study hall, or today, Satanic Law School, but study hall. We are doing The Devil All the Time by Donald Ray Pollock. I'm so excited. I've wanted to talk about this book for months, and this seemed like a good opportunity to finally do it. So yes, The Devil All the Time was written by Donald Ray Pollock in 2011. And of course, nobody knows about it until now, which is 2021, because a movie came out recently and everybody watched the movie. So then the book sold a lot better than I think it was doing before the movie came out. But the film adaptation, directed by Antonio Campos, was released on Netflix in September of 2020 with much praise for the casting. I think the movie itself had some mixed reviews. But I'll get into it a little bit. This is a book review. It's going to be more about the book than it is about the film. But I did see the film. before I picked up the book, so I have to at least talk about that a little.
That's right. It's got Spider-Man in it, damn it.
Damn it. Yeah. Definitely get to that. So I was in my little house one night with my couple of my friends, and we were looking for something to watch. And they said, oh, like, you know, The Devil All the Time came up on Netflix. They said, let's watch that. I said, no. They said, why not? I was like, because I'm looking at the trailer right now, and it looks like a, you know, big actor name smorgasbord, and it just seemed like a money grab just for the big name actors. I was looking at it. I was like, oh, well, he's in a remake I hate. He's in a remake I hate. She's in a remake I hate. He's in a remake I actively, you know, tried not to see. And that's Robert Pattinson. I don't want to watch this movie.
I'm glad you're not having you review movies.
But so we ended up watching it regardless, and I was really, really impressed by everybody in it. I was impressed with the filmography. Just the way it was shot, the script. Donald Ray Pollock, the author himself, actually did the narration for the movie, and it just gave it a really authentic feeling. So I do recommend the movie adaptation for anybody who wants to check that out as well. But then, after the movie, I picked up the book. So, in Pollock's debut novel, we're dropped into post-World War II Appalachia, where the adverse lives of haunted characters unveil and their misfortunes converge under hideous circumstances. We meet the loud Reverend Roy Lafferty, a talented faith healer with a knack for spider charming. Carl Henderson and his wife Sandy, a murderous couple with an affinity for hitchhikers and depraved photography. Sheriff Lee Bodecker, a lawman who takes his investments in re-elections and side hustles rather seriously. The handsome Reverend Teagarden, a novice evangelist with plans for the youngest females among his loyal congregation. And finally, Arvin Russell, a kind but tragedy-plagued boy with a family who fights the devil all the time. These are their stories. Dun dun.
Dun dun. You did it before I could.
Yeah, so to summarize, this is just a book. It's kind of a portraiture about several kind of fucked up characters living in this area between southern Ohio and West Virginia, and we get into it a little bit. So what stands out off the bat, the setting, it's Appalachian Gothic. It's classified as that, and therefore it's naturally creepy, woodsy, hazardous, and it's a bleak environment where all kinds of isolated horror occurs unseen. Pollock is actually a native of southern Ohio himself, and he's well researched in the area and the time period, so his expertise around it kind of just fills up the story and just completely buries the reader in the location. The next thing is the Feast of Degenerate Psyches, as I call it, and not the good type of degenerates like us. You know, if you pick up this book, you're walking into some twisted minds, and you better make yourself right at home because you're not going anywhere. There's so much really complex and dark and evil characters that I could get into, but I just picked two for the sake of the review. One is Carl Henderson. Spoiler alert, there's a serial killer in this, and, you know, he has an accomplice, and they're weird. I'm not going to lie to you, their method of serial killing is weird. It kind of edges, in my opinion. It edges believability as far as serial killers go. It's gruesome, it's weird. Like I said in the beginning, they have an affinity for hitchhikers and photography, and, you know, I'll leave it at that.
Can you give us an example of a gruesome fucking death?
In the book?
Yeah.
Yeah, every murder Carl commits is is insanely gruesome. All right, okay, fine. If you want a spoiler, they lure hitchhikers, him and his wife, into really rural areas of Appalachia, but they also travel the country. He makes them copulate with his wife before torturing what they call, they're the victims, but they torture the models, as him and his wife calls them, and he does everything. Pollock leaves stuff up to the imagination as well. You know, there's a lot of torture that goes on while him and his wife are taking these pictures, and then, you know, he'll eventually murder the poor bastard.
Okay.
So
I'm still glad I asked. I just wanted an idea.
That's not one example. You know, you'll get quite a few of those in this book. Carl, though, he's also a vulnerable narcissist, which is a little bit different in terms of reading about serial killers. And his dynamic with his wife, who's also his serial killer accomplice, is different too. He loves his wife, and his wife loves him, and of course it's a toxic relationship where they're doing horrible things, but they don't live in complete fear of one another. Whereas, if someone was that depraved and sick and violent, if I were living in their household, I'd be in constant fear of my life. And there is a little bit of that goes on, but there is still an element of respect between them that I found a little bit confusing, and that is why I said it pivots this line of believability. And just in my opinion, Carl is portrayed by Jason Clarke in the film, who is a great actor. I think actually his portrayal in the film is a little bit more believable because you don't spend as much time in his head as you do in the book. And Jason Clarke's performance is it's a little bit more overconfident than the character is supposed to be, so he's in more control when he's committing these murders. And it actually makes for some really scary parts of the film. If you don't end up wanting to read the book, I think, if you're somebody who's into just terror and psychological thriller, I think that will impress you. And the next dark psyche is Reverend Preston T. Garden, who is 3, 2, 1. The next depraved character in it that I picked out is Reverend Preston T. Garden, who is played by Rob Pattinson in the film. He is a youthful, handsome new minister ushered in through nepotism. He uses hysteric sermons and expansive knowledge of the gospel as a weapon of power, which sounds like a stereotype, like har har, bad preacher does bad things, har har. Like, this goes a little bit deeper than that, though, in my opinion. And, how many examples can we pull up of preachers using their power to manipulate, to sexually manipulate people in their congregation? The same thing's going on with this guy, only it gets a little bit more up in your face in terms of his psychological cruelty with the young female parishioners in his congregation. There's just sexual manipulation, but there's also other kinds that go on as well. And it might make you sick. It made me sick, but it was still an interesting character, in my opinion. It was still kind of cool to be in his head and see what makes him tick and see, like, does he have an end game? What's his end game? How does he think he's not gonna, how does he think he's gonna get away with this in such a small town, in such a small congregation? So that does get, a little bit more in depth in the book. I would say, just like Jason Clarke, though, Rob Pattinson's performance is just kind of flat out scary, surface level. He did a really good job. Something about his performance it impressed me. It was a little bit over the top. His West Virginia accent, though, I thought it was pretty good. He has these weird high inflections and notes that he hits, and it's creepy. And he's good looking and he's charming. But I think, just to bring up Twilight, yeah,
I'm gonna give you a pass on
something for my generation. Once in a while, oh my God, you have to deal with something in my age group for once. That is
true. I'll give you that one.
I have the control. But no, I will keep it short. Just on the opposite of Twilight, I think it became very
real quick. He better not fuck up Batman for me. Just saying.
I hope not either.
Okay,
we agree on that point. Perfectly valid opinion, Bill, in my opinion.
Yeah, that's all I got.
So on the flip side of Twilight, I think after the movie came out, people and the book, not just the movie, the book, but people started to realize, this is only acceptable to the mass public because he's handsome and charming. But other than that, his creepy behavior would not be acceptable on any term. And this movie and book flips that. It shows, this is a really handsome and charismatic individual, but it vamps up the creepiness so much that you being a reader and a viewer, you're not even comfortable anymore with the fact that he's handsome and charming. And just outside of that, it's a generally very terrifying performance. I mean, I was scared for every character, but mainly every young woman he came in contact with, not only in the book, but in the film. So the bonus to these degenerate psyches that, you'll experience in the book is suffering. I'm not going to lie to you. In the middle of this book, I had to put it down. It's not a feel-good book. It'll make you sad and feel heavy. There's one particularly really bad sexual assault, or at least a flashback to one that happens in the middle of the book that just after it was done, I was like, how much more suffering can go on in this book before I just can't read it anymore.
Right.
But you pick it back up and you realize this is just raw writing about what has gone on, in that time period that the author has so much experience with. And to a degree, I'm very happy that, all of this suffering is portrayed as rawly as it is, instead of, covering it up or not leading it in there. It fits the style of what the Appalachian Gothic is supposed to be. But just a fair warning for anybody, if you want a feel-good book, this is not it. Next is the Crossing Paths storyline done right. You'll sometimes, well, not sometimes, you'll get a lot of books where there's a lot of characters, it's from a lot of points of view, and their paths will diverge. I think a good example, and a modern example, is Game of Thrones, not just the show, but also the books. Mm-hmm. And it's kind of done as an automated template for I'm an author, I have a lot of characters, I have a storyline, I want these to converge appropriately. And it's kind of done like that. And then you'll see rom-coms, or you'll read romantic literature where it's done in a really corny, cheesy way. And
any incest in the devil all the time, or?
Yes. It's Appalachia. What do you want me to say?
You said Game of Thrones. I had to ask there.
Of course.
The whole fucking Lannister bloodline.
Of course, just a little bit, just a little. But so this crossing paths storyline, because all of the characters I've mentioned just far in the first summary, and the two characters I just gave an example of, their paths cross at some point, and in my opinion, this is that type of story done right. Nothing really seems forced when any of the characters end up crossing paths. Usually a lot of time, like decades and suffering and just their own individual storylines, have gone by the time they meet each other and interact in each other's stories. So I just think that was done really well. I think it's a really easy thing to fuck up, and I was really impressed with the way he fit this all together. This is just for me, but pride and self-defense. I'm personally finding in this world we live in now that there is a little bit of a gradual move toward being ashamed of being able to defend yourself in your own home. Taking arms away from women so that they will not be able to defend themselves against people who are, physically bigger and stronger than them. It's something that means a lot to me, just since I'm so on my own. But this story has a very stark kind of stance in, no, if you're being picked on, if you're being ganged up on, you need to learn how to defend yourself, and you need to do it proudly. And, if someone weaker in your family or your friend group is being singled out for, their weak attributes, or because somebody sees them as weak, you need to defend them too. The broad interpretation and the elicitation of sympathy is also really big. The story presents humanity and, just the human struggle, even if it isn't pretty. When you're finished reading, you could very well interpret the meaning as like everybody is horrible and the pains of living never end, but I thought it was a lot more than that. The biggest quote I think that comes out of the book is very, very early on, and I think he was very smart to open it with this. But the quote is, "It seemed to his son that his father was fighting the devil all the time." What he is talking about within context is the father figure, Willard, who you meet pretty early in the book. He's just returning from World War II. In World War II, I'm not going to tell you exactly what he sees. Willard is a soldier, and he sees something in Asia during World War II that is just, it's so horrible that you can feel in this character, you have empathy for him. You think about somebody after seeing that, coming back, having to deal with that, how could you not think that some devil or evil entity exists? And so, this soldier's psyche is so fucked up after returning from war that he convinces himself that he has to fight what he's manifested in his own mind as the devil, and he has to fight it all the time, or else things like that are going to keep happening to him, and they might eventually come for the people he loves. So
it's fucking deep.
Yeah, exactly. It's the biggest reason why I thought this was so good. It's not to say like, everybody's horrible and suffering, and just people who believe in the devil and God as intensely as they do are just really ignorant, or it's just tradition. Like, no, some people experience trauma that you'll never be able to understand, and it can, in my opinion, and, as this book really, it illustrates, it can destroy any reasonable mind. So I'm really happy he started off so horrible and so strong in the beginning of the book with that. The movie adaptation does that as well. You'll see the death I'm talking about at the very beginning of the movie. It's something that's probably going to sit with me for the rest of my life because of how grave it is. So the relevance to Satanism, this is the last part. And the biggest one is the devil, or at least the meaning of the devil, what the characters interpret as the meaning of the devil. And a lot of them, this is like a backwoodsy place with a lot of fanatical Christian religions, so they see it as something, they see the devil as something, to blame, to fear, and to create, they use it to create reactionary evil themselves, even though they don't always know that they're doing it. As you read through the story, it becomes apparent that while they're fighting an invisible enemy, the devil is the evil in individuals or in the most painful and gruesome realities of life, like disease, poverty, and broken dreams, something that not only just evil individuals who can control their own actions, but also the circumstances of life that you can't control, that are so painful and beat you down so much, that they have to assign, some kind of higher power blame to it. And that becomes the devil that they fight all the time. And then just a cool thing that I, related back to Satanism was the possible connection to the devil in the land. And what I mean, it's of course up for debate, but because the focus is so heavy on, a specific time period and specific geographics, it almost feels like there is an aspect of the land and culture that is directly connected to the devil itself. I don't think that everybody will interpret it like that. I just think that, as a Satanist, I looked at it from several different angles, and I'm like, wow, maybe this is so permeated in the culture and in the land they've lived on for so long that the devil, they've taken the devil past just some concept. They've actually created a devil that's attached to the land, or maybe the author is trying to say, no, there is a devil. You can't see him, but he's there, and he's in the people that are born on this land.
I've got to ask, was this book or this movie or this experience with the author, did that help inspire you to take that little trip you told us about?
To be honest with you, it didn't. I think I did see the movie before I went on that trip. But I didn't read the book before I went on that trip. It was
West Virginia thing. It keeps popping up around you. It's a reoccurring theme.
I'm becoming the Appalachia Satanist, despite not being connected to Appalachia in roots or anything else. I am aware of what's happening here, Bill. Thank you for pointing it out.
Yeah, I'm seeing a theme, as it keeps coming up. As soon as you be like, oh, I'm moving to West Virginia. I gotta go. It
did just so happen that we had a trip planned to West Virginia. My friends came over. They said, let's watch this movie. We watched it, and then we went to West Virginia, I guess a week or two later, and then I came back, and I had gotten the book by then, and I started reading it. But yes, I totally see the connection. And then the relevance to Satanism, it's maybe not relevant to Satanism, but it's just to point out the stupidity and craziness of faith healing and showmanship. There's ties to the Gothic aspect of it and just the horror nature of the story. It illustrates a lot how congregations get, that they find God or they find whatever higher power they're looking for extremely by doing extreme things. I mentioned spider charming a little bit earlier. I'm not, exaggerating. That it'll freak you out if you're an arachnophobe.
Yeah. I'm not gonna look that up. That's not a Google search for me.
Watch the entire movie.
Actually wrote that down to ask what it was.
He thinks he's a spider charmer, among other things. It's, the lengths that these preachers will go to keep their congregation's attention and maybe even reach God themselves in their own heads. It's a little, it's kind of crazy. It begs the question, when you don't have other sources of entertainment or other alternative sources of like leadership, education, industry in the places you live, are you kind of just doomed to find yourself in one of these small congregations, no matter what it is, no matter what denomination it is, even if it was like a little Satanist congregation in the middle of the woods, are we all gonna, if the TVs and electric stops tomorrow, are we all gonna find ourselves in a satanic church house, spider charming and doing a bunch of crazy shit just to find, just to discover our highest connection with whatever higher power that we've come to believe in out of complete boredom.
People are nuts.
Yeah, start believing in crazy, like objectively crazy things and start doing objectively crazy shit. And this book, it has some scenes that Satanists, I think, would be interested in terms of, how often we go out of our way to point out just the absurdities of certain religious practices and beliefs. So that is most of what I got out of the relevance to Satanism. I was very shocked by this movie. I hate Netflix, but then occasionally a movie like this will pop up and I'll be like, damn it, damn it, I can't get rid of my Netflix account yet because, sometimes I'll see things like this and be really impressed. Definitely one of the best movies of 2020 for me. I recommend that everybody watch it if you have the stomach for it. I recommend that everybody read it if you're into really good, kind of horrific, gothic period pieces. And, if you are like me, the fast becoming Appalachian Satanist, and have any affinity for that particular area of the United States, definitely check it out. I think you'll be impressed. I think it'll, sit with you at the very least. That was The Devil All the Time by Donald Ray Pollock.
Thank you, Veronica. No, you sold me. I'm probably going to start with the book and then dive into the movie. All right. Thank you, Veronica. That was awesome. And I guess it's time to unpause our little journey here with Stu. What do you think?
I agree.
All right. So I'll kick it off because this is a question I'm kind of dying to ask based on research. So the criminal defense attorney, was that the law that you've typically practiced since you started, or did you kind of evolve into that?
That's my field. So I've always been a criminal defense attorney for my entire career, either public or private practice. I've done both. I've done all levels. I've done appeal levels, appellate levels. So I'm still a criminal defense attorney. That's probably my entire career will be. The Satanic Temple stuff came out of necessity. I mean, I think a lot of law kids, dream of doing like a big First Amendment case that no one's done before, but it's not often that comes up. Nor did I really jump on the chance. I kind of waited for a long time because, I figured maybe someone would step up to do this, but no one would. So I took my first case before the statute ran, and then I continued to do this until now. I mean, I've got 2 of the cases still with my co-counsel, but this was something I was attempting to start, not finish. So it's not going to be long-term that I'm the attorney for the Satanic Temple. This was just something that had to be done. So I did it. And
it sounds like, just on what little I know, that there are a lot of, not only are there a lot of moving parts, but there are a lot of, good minds involved in the work that's going on right now. So hopefully that can kind of create that situation where you can, that prophecy of starting it and kind of letting go a little bit and kind of help come to fruition.
Well, we did. I passed the torch to my co-counsel. So years ago, I made friends with a guy who I had very little time to vet, Matthew Kazaya. He'd be taking over the remainder of the cases for the foreseeable future. So it worked out great, actually. I do constitutional law. It's just different amendments. That's how I describe it. So, Fourth Amendment, First Amendment are 2 different things. But I'm glad that we got this started. I'm glad I did the Baphomet lawsuit. I did the Scottsdale lawsuit. And then I'm still doing a lot of legal advising for Lucian and for the temple in general. So I'm always involved somehow in the lawsuits, but I'm not putting my name on them at this point on any of the new stuff.
All right. And another thing that came up in my research was the Adopt a Highway program. Can you tell us a little bit about that and what, how that kind of came about? It did get a good amount of media attention, just from what I've seen in the research. And is there any other charitable initiatives that you might be involved with currently that you might want to shed some light on?
So yeah, the Adopt a Highway situation. We were, I think, the second or third chapter to do that. Actually, it was the first time I saw the words Friends of the Satanic Temple. It was before a chapter. It was a chapter in Colorado. So Denver actually did it first successfully. And I think we were the second ones to do it successfully. And, I was, at this point, I had already been litigating. So I was going to sue the Department of Transportation if they'd have denied us. But they were fine. They were like, yeah, put it on up. So we got signed right away. Still going to this day. So we've had it going for several years now. And I think my chapter, the Arizona chapter, which I don't have much involvement anymore, but I think they're doing park cleanups now in Tucson as well. So we did a really big Menstruating with Satan campaign. And then we one that we called Lord of the Ties, which was getting suits and dress clothes for people that needed to go to job interviews or court appearances, people that might not have those clothes or can afford those clothes otherwise.
That's fucking awesome.
For me personally, I'm of the opinion strongly that our charity shouldn't be just random, food drives and cans of shit. I think we, as Satanists, our duty is to do charities for the more overlooked in society or the more demonized in society or neglected. And to me, people that are felons or people on probation or might have a drug addiction and they're trying to get back on their feet is exactly the kind of people we should be helping with our charity drives, that is.
I completely agree with like you said, with the felons and the addicts, they definitely need help to get off their feet. I got plenty of friends in both positions, and I try and help out as much as I can, but there's only so much that I can do personally. So it would be great to see more of that happen.
Yeah, especially, in the United States with our incarceration rate, we all have every single person's been touched by the criminal justice system, whether it was themselves or a loved one had a drug addiction or went to prison. And, this isn't that underground. I mean, it seems like it is socially, but this is, everybody knows somebody that needs this kind of help. And in my opinion, again, I'm not speaking on behalf of TST when it comes to this. This is my opinion, is that that's what our charity drives should be focused on. Because, I think that's why I like Menstruating with Satan too, because we're looking for charity that was trans and LGBT community friendly, specifically for that kind of thing. Of course, women in general are overlooked. They're not the ones that people are generally doing charity drives for. There's plenty of other ones. There's a million charities for lots of causes, which is great. But I think ours should point towards, the Satanized people of the country.
Yeah, that's great. The Off the Highway program is now, how often is that? It's like a monthly thing. And do you guys, I've heard stories of people using like pitchforks and shit when they're
yeah, that's our chapter. So I had very little to do with actually the putting this together. Actually, one of our chapter members in America, at the time, she really put this together, but it's been carried on continuously by newer members. A lot of people that started it are now gone, but it's still going, and people are picking up where it left off. That's what's very exciting to me. I think as the chapter head, that's a point of pride for me that, I am long gone. Michelle's long gone from the chapter leadership and all that. And even though we have nothing to do with it anymore, people really did step up to complete that. And I think that's what's going to need to happen. This organization gets, can't be the originals do a bunch of stuff and then it goes by the wayside. So yeah, they're still picking it up. I think it's bi-monthly, every other month, maybe. It's not super frequent, but it's enough where, it's a number of times a year and a group goes out there. And one of our members made those pitchforks to pick stuff up.
Hell yeah.
Worker.
So now moving forward, one of the things that we like to do here at Satanic Study Hall is, we say like every episode is just gain some perspective around Satanism. We have listeners that have been around and been members of the temple since, 2013, that have been, crazy active within the community. We have members and listeners that are, just, dipping their toes and considering membership and trying to differentiate TST from Church of Satan and all of that. There's just all over the spectrum. So one of the things we like to do here is just hone some perspective from people who, are well versed within the community. And, I know you're very well read said, I know reading's important to you as it is to many of us. So, you definitely offer a very powerful and, awesome perspective when it comes to this whole Satanic Temple movement and Satanism in general. So I'm kind of going to give the whole flow of questions around Satanism over to Dennis and let him ask you a couple things around like misconceptions people have, things around what you think the future are in Satanism and stuff like that. So what do you think, Dennis? You on board with with that little part of our notes?
Sure. Yeah, I can definitely jump into that. You were talking about misconceptions. What are the biggest misconceptions that people have about Satanism?
Well, I'll say the biggest misconception that I like to address about TST is that we're either trolls or activists. I think activism is a symptom of it. I don't think it's the main thing. And what's been bothering me is ever since, especially the documentary came out, people get involved that don't have any interest in actual Satanism. They just want to go either troll the religious right or wear a funny hat and say, look, we're a review, and now we're challenging something in my school or whatever. And I'm like, man, this is serious shit. Like, this isn't something you fuck around with like that. And that really bothers me. So in the early days, my misconception about Satanism talk would be about, we're not devil worshippers and we don't sacrifice babies. But now I've swung completely the other way, where I'm like, if you just want the activism, go do activism. But, this is our actual religion. Like, we care deeply about this. These are our deeply beliefs. We practice this religion. So if you just want to hold a sign with a pentagram for the picture, please don't do that shit. I always tell people, please do some research on which group. You want to join the Church of Satan, that's fine. You want to join the Satanic Temple, that's great. But, I also don't want people having to be spoon-fed, the let me Google that for you type stuff has always bothered me. Hand-holding. I was like, I don't want to do satanic hand-holding. I'm happy to talk about all day, 101 stuff, all of it, as long as people are interested and not just get on this activism bandwagon, which is kind of what it became to me. Of course, this is my experience where I was getting, inundated with messages and things. There were a lot of that. So it's like I was saying, why it's worth fighting for is the activism, is the fighting for it. It doesn't start with the activism. That's fine. These are my deeply held beliefs. Those are worth fighting for. So it's like putting the cart before the horse if you get into it first from the activism. That's kind of how I've been thinking about it lately when it's like, what's a misconception about TST?
Okay. Yeah, no, that sounds great. I love how you pointed out, like, if you're only for the activism, just go do that. Like, this is a deeply held belief system for us. Now with, the TST starting, I mean, we're still very fresh. With them being new and growing as rapidly as they have, where do you think the future of Satanism is headed?
Well, that's an interesting question. I mean, we're kind of building it in a way, and not to sound like we're the harbingers of what Satanism is, but we have done a lot of the public sphere stuff. I think that's unequivocal. I think that's a true statement. In fact, in federal court, Scottsdale, I think it was the first time a federal court record said that Satanism is a real religion by every metric of the standard, regardless of its theistic nature. And to me, that part of the ruling was one of their defenses. And I think being put on paper, the Satanic Temple specifically is a real religion. That's, we all get that, pushback a lot. I think that was a big deal. So I think we're in the infancy. You wonder about things like secession. What happens when Lucian Greaves isn't around? What happens when, you lose some of the institutional memory? A lot of us are either over the hill or retired from this or as an organization or what have you. So I think we're so new, and we're spearheading so many new things, including the ordination program. Well, that was another thing I was involved in, by the way. I give one of the lectures for ordination on witch hunts. But, we're just now getting the ordination. We're just now treading, making some movements in the federal court system. And eventually it'll be the state court system. And eventually when we say our name, people are going to say, we know who they are and we know what they do. And we know, and I think that is when we will have made it, I think. And by numbers of how many people are interested in members compared to when I started, staggering. It went from several hundred to several thousand to tens of thousands, in several years. As far as Church of Satan, I think it'll always be around. I think it'll always be more underground, which is just fine. I think it's straight from what LaVoe wanted. but how is that not happen? So again, I think it's a mysterious future for us.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. With the thought of where the temple is headed in the future, what do you think is like the biggest thing that's holding Satanism back from reaching that?
I think what's holding us back is ourselves. I think Satanists hold Satanism back. And I think that because I think there's a lot of, I don't know if you guys have read the Invention of Satanism book, which is one of the books that I think is a really good first read if you're getting just involved. The Invention of Satanism book talks about reactive Satanists, which is kind of people that do it, kind of sometimes the activists are like this too, the people that do it to piss someone off. Blasphemy is just to piss someone else off, but that's kind of shallow. And I think that sets us back. I think our fucking Spirit Halloween store robes set us back. I think we could be taken seriously around in a fucking $10 Halloween robe holding a plastic skull. I don't think that does anything for Satanism. I think that makes us look like fucking clowns. The whole thing being flooded with people that want to get on board with the activism, I think that slows us down because I think it makes it so we don't seem as legitimate, because when those people are out in the public talking about why they're in it, people are, it's one of them. They're not real Satanists. And I hate that stuff. The religious right is going to do what they do. We're going to court cases. It's going to be an uphill battle, but that's going to happen regardless. That's not holding us back. That's just part of the process, in my opinion. That's just how it's going to go. You have to bash your head against the wall over and over again before you knock it over. And that's the point that we're at. That's not holding us back. That's the narrative. That's how this goes. Eventually, if we put up the Baphomet monument, someone's going to blow it up. We know that's going to probably happen. These people are violent. I think internally we kind of get held back because we're still trying to figure out our footing, figure out where we are, which is normal. Again, that's also part of the process.
As a Satanist personally, like what is one moment that you were the most proud to be a Satanist? Anything particularly stand out?
Oh, that's a good question. There was a lot going on in, I'd say, 2016. There was one time I was on national news a bunch, which was more intimidating than like a pride moment. When we finished the trial in Scottsdale, that was a pride moment because it was grueling and it took 4 years to get there. I was proud to do the ordination. But some of my favorite parts were some of the social gatherings we did a while back. We did this presentation, Nihil Sanctum, which was like nothing sacred. It was like this basically reverse passion play we put together. We did As Witches Burn, which was one of my favorite events ever, where we had the bar install stripper poles, and then the witches were put the stake, and then they pole danced on the stakes and went all night, where people were rotating up, and Shiva Honey DJ'd the whole thing, or DJ'd part of it. We had bands and stuff. It was great. It was fantastic. That was one of my favorite things. So I think there's different, there's different components. There's like the activist component. I did a lawsuit. There's the community component. We threw some pretty bomb, events. It's kind of a different point of pride with all of those different things. I did enjoy, when I was a national council, it was like, I helped write a lot of the policies. Whether they lasted or not doesn't matter to me, because if it evolved and they figured out a different way, good, but we just had to start forming this thing early on. So yeah, it's just different. I guess I've got different points of pride for different of these things, and it's all kind of a different feeling.
Oh yeah, it's almost like a different level of pillars and everything. There's a community sense of pride. There's that personal fucking fuck yeah, I had a great fucking time tonight. Like, this was awesome. Everyone came together and killed it type of moment. And I can definitely get down with that. So as far as I think there's only like one more, and I'm going to skip a couple here in the interest of time. But one thing we like to ask too, from the perspective thing, is you've talked about a lot. You've talked about almost some recommendations in regards to take it seriously. If you want to flatter the activism, please do. But in regards to people that really are trying to take this seriously and immerse themselves, and the people that are feeling like really strongly like this might be something for them, what advice do you have, personally, for anybody that is, adopting this lifestyle, or, is really considering, becoming a Satanist?
I'd say read everything you can and consider the consequences. If you're going to lose your kids in a custody battle, maybe think twice. If you're going to lose your job, if mom's going to disown you, these is it really worth it to openly identify this way? I don't use a pseudonym. I don't, to me, that's something I'm not interested in doing, but I also have that luxury. I have an understanding family. I was my own boss, kids in danger. I don't live in the deep South. So, that's kind of my Satan privilege right there. Right. But, sometimes I see people get involved and then I'm horrified at what ends up happening to them. They get asked from their community somehow, or, they face some serious consequences. Consider that, please. But also, don't expect handholding. Read as much as you can, and there's plenty of resources now, much more now than in the beginning of material. Nothing's really canonized with the Satanic Temple, but there's a lot of different websites with recommended reading, from Lucian Greaves to even the individual chapters, or you can talk to people established in the community that can have recommendations. But yeah, there's some stuff that you might read that'll really put you off this, and then don't try to force yourself into that, that square peg into the round hole or whatever. Like, it's coming home religion. When you join it, you should feel this is the where you should have been the whole time you just hadn't found it yet. If you don't have that feeling, that's when religion is questionable to me. So if it doesn't feel right, own that. And if it does, own that also. But, that's part of the beauty of this, is you come at your own pace, whether you're fresh from the womb or you're an old man who discovered it. That's fine. I don't like the whole seniority thing. I've been doing this. Who cares?
Bill, am I the square peg in the round hole?
Yes.
I've been the square peg in the round hole my entire life.
There's also the Satan adjacents, which I'm a big, we kind of coined that phrase, I think, from the Arizona chapter. And I think I really like the Satan adjacents that say, support everything you're doing. I love the imagery. I like the books, but it's not for me. Good. I'm glad you recognize that you like it and you're a supporter, but you're also, you don't want to identify that way. That's totally respectable. You're not like shallow water for that. You actually have a little bit of introspection.
Oh, great. Thank you. Cool. That was nuanced and very reasonable.
Do you feel a little rounder now, Veronica?
No.
Man, I think that's important too. And one of the things, some things that I personally saw happen when, this all started happening is, one thing that I did see happen to some friends is almost trying to, completely immerse themselves in the community aspect of it without even fully understanding what it is themselves, or falling in love with the theatrics and almost forcing themselves to fall in line down the road because of how many connections they might have made, or, how cool it might seem or how good it might be feeling at that moment. But I think that's fantastic advice. And, especially, and I think one of the messages that I kind of want to, kind of convey is, just like you just said with that introspection piece, like the Satan adjacents, like that is okay. Like you can still interact and support a community and do your own thing and march to the beat of your own drum as far as what's right for you, and not feel like, oh, well, if I speak up, or that's cool. But, and that's one thing I think it's really, as far as sending that message, is this is, a deeply held belief system, but at the same time, it isn't for everybody, just like Christianity isn't for everybody. And, acknowledging that and being real with yourself and being your true, authentic self is the main goal, no matter what. And if it happens to be within the belief system and the alignment of the 7 tenets, fucking awesome. If not, I have more respect for people who make that, journey and that attempt to be their true, authentic self, regardless of, their belief system overall, because that's just fucking a respectable characteristic.
Yeah. And I think you could say that for any person, just being true to yourself. And of course, that's a satanic idol. I did say something that I think was important. You mentioned how some people go full speed ahead, where they kind of create their entire identity around this aesthetic. And I'm a huge fan of psychodrama myself, which was a LaVeyan concept originally, but I like all that. But again, that's one component. This is a broad spectrum of things coming together. But I heard something interesting recently where it said that you only define your identity by one thing. It's like your egg in one basket. And I actually don't think that's satanic. I think what's being satanic is to experience your full spectrum of interests and philosophies and whatever it is that works for you. And that way, if something changes or one ball gets dropped, it doesn't crush your entire personality. It doesn't crush your entire identity. Like you can adapt in changing with the sails, changing the sails with the wind, exactly what we're supposed to do. So I do caution people also, like, don't get too involved too fast. This isn't going anywhere. This is a long race that's only with yourself. And when people are just like all Satan all the time, I think they kind of actually lose themselves into this imagery, into this persona almost, that, the spooky Satanist thing. But there's more to life than Satanism. That's just supposed to be a small piece of your identity.
And again, prophetic shit right there, because and there's, personally, I just took, something out of that, and I know so many more people will, whether it resonates personally with them or people that they may know. So
yeah, especially the losing yourself component.
Yes.
I think, we all can speak to just friends or family members that have, either through born again methods into anything, Abrahamic religions, and just some of the new, I'd say maybe even neo-pagan and spiritual stuff that's coming out. We've all kind of seen somebody transform, sometimes for the better, but sometimes not. You get worried about them. So I think that's a really good point.
If you do, and if you see people doing that in other religions, you worry about them, right?
Mm-hmm. Like, exactly. Oh God, so why wouldn't it apply here? Exactly.
Yeah, it's the same thing. You just don't see it because you're around people that are friendly to it. But I think we're not doing them a service by not trying to pull the reins. And there's no, there's no Sataner than thou. It's just like, we've all seen it. Obviously, it's why we're all talking about it, is we've all seen it. So it's not that rare either.
No, it's not.
I fell into it. I mean, it got to a point where I was working on TST so often that it was like consuming my life. And I don't think that's a good thing. I had to pull the reins on myself there, but it's what had to be done at the time. So, I think there's an ebb and flow to all this also.
We're getting close to the end here, but I am going to pass things over to our valedictorian. Veronica's got a list of a couple of cases that I'm sure you're rather familiar with. And just to kind of coincide with some of the updates that have been going on, a lot of people that are, members of the temple have been getting the, updates on some of the legal stuff that's going on in their emails. And I thought it'd be a good opportunity, since we have you on, just to kind of gather a little bit of your thoughts, and if there's any perspective you can add to some of the things that are going on within our little community here. So, Veronica, it is all you.
So Baphomet and the 10 Commandments.
The last thing that happened was there was a mutual discovery request, which is information the other party might have that's relevant to the issues in the case. And we've been waiting for a ruling on that for months and months. So the federal courts kind of work at their own pace. They can pretty much conduct things within the rules as they see fit. So once the rulings come down, we're going to file what I imagine are what's called cross summary judgment motions, which means we're all to say, here's the facts. There's no dispute of these facts. They're in this container. And since we know what they are, there's no reason for a trial, and we should win because of this reason. So we're both going to argue that. And then if it's granted one side or the other, I imagine it will get appealed to the 8th Circuit. If there's still facts in dispute that can't be resolved, we got to go to trial. So that's where that one is.
All right. What about TST versus Scottsdale? What's going on?
So we went to trial a year ago. It was in January of 20. We lost the trial and now on appeal to the 9th Circuit on issues of both fact and law, which make it even more complex because there's questions of whether the judge made a correct ruling on the law and on the facts of the case as to the trier of both. Fully briefed. Oral argument is on March 18th. Again, whenever the ruling comes out, it could be the next day, it could be months and months down the road. We don't know. So, of course, we're asking for them to reverse the ruling, which is another uphill battle. So they are very difficult on appeal, but that's where we're in that case.
Now, the Ohio fetal burial remains law and Judy Doe. Can you talk a little bit about Judy Doe and what happened there?
The religious reproductive rights cases are a little different. Other cases, I call them Lucian's Law cases. We're asking for a plurality to be respected. So we're not asking for anything to be removed. We're asking for things to be put in addition to what already exists. since religious liberty is its own set of laws, essentially, what happened was we had two separate lawsuits still on the federal level. We ended up losing on everything. And we petitioned to the United States Supreme Court to hear them, which denied it, which I'm not surprised by. There is some case law on this stuff, but that one I think was one of the most, if not the most important case we had. That wasn't my case. It was before my time, actually. Right before my time, as it turns out. I think I joined the Satanic Temple when the time the case was initiated. But once the Supreme Court denies it, it's a dead case. It's done. It's resolved. So we did that one. And that had to do with 3-day waiting periods on abortions. And we said we had a waiver thing. Don't adhere to reading Christian literature for 3 days before getting this medical practice. It has nothing to do with that medical procedure. And they said, well, you didn't have to read it. You just had to receive it. So that was part of why we lost. So as you can see, a very, very, very small detail that you might not even know when the case started could tank the thing. And it's unpredictable.
What about Belle Plaine? I had a big personal interest in this. This is a Satanic Veterans Memorial that is being put up in a park alongside a Christian Veterans Memorial. Am I right? Where are we with that?
So what happened there was the judge dismissed all of our constitutional claims that this was a equal protection and an establishment clause violation. Those were dismissed. The only claim remaining in federal court is what's called promissory estoppel. What that means is an alliance to a detriment. So in this case, they said, hey, you can put the money up, we paid for, and actually created it for that purpose because we were told we could put it up. When they rescinded that offer, we were money for the production costs and things like that. So they said that's still in play, not the constitutional claims. What we do from there is still up in the air.
On the basis of religion, though, they dismissed this even with we have the right to put this up on the basis of religious representation. Yeah,
and we very much disagree with that ruling, and we haven't decided what we're going to do yet.
That's just crazy to me. Wow, I mean,
there was a lot of evidence for it, so we were kind of surprised too.
Yeah.
In fact, there was more evidence than we thought when it first got initiated. There's some procedural things that were in here that are boring that I won't get into, but that's still up in the air of what happens next.
Okay. I'll watch that one closely, though. That one, just in terms of reading even the basics of it, I was like, well, this is pretty cut and dry, but that's insane. Okay, and then the last is TST versus Boston.
New hot topic.
So that's another invocation case, a different type. So Scottsdale's called an all-comer system. There we're challenging their unwritten policies, essentially. Anyone can come give an invocation, but not you. Okay, so you can see that might be a problem with the Establishment Clause. Boston's is that the legislators themselves give the invocation based on their own religion, which presents a whole different set of potential legal issues, representation and things like that. That case is all brand new. We just filed it. I'm not fully up to date on where that is, other than I think we're still waiting a response to it. So that one's brand new. We'll have more information as it progresses.
Now, I do have a small question. This may seem a little bit silly, but just Boston. Is that, are we kind of going after Boston as a city for its individual city law, or is this like a Massachusetts statewide?
So these are called 1983 claims, and that's based on a statute number.
Okay.
Where you sue whatever government entity you're alleging violated your constitutional rights. So when it comes to invocation practice, those city codes, those are city to city. There's no state law in invocations.
Right.
But when it's that, your defendant is going to be the city, the actors. But usually it's the city because they've got immunity. You can't. if a politician gets sued for any decision they make, they'd be getting sued constantly. There falls on the city if they were acting within the scope of their duty. This gets very complicated. What the scope of their duty was and who they're working for. And at the moment this happened, was it a legislative or administrative decision? So even though it seems like a lot of people are like, oh, you guys got this in the bag, man, this shit is complicated. Believe me.
Yeah.
Now, with this Boston case going on, I know that Mayor Martin Walsh didn't really come out and give a statement. Do you expect him to, or even tickle the idea that he's going to?
No, I doubt it, because they're going to be advised not to by the lawyers. Most people don't talk about their pending cases, but I think with TST, it's like we've been beating the same drum this entire time. Like, we're not hiding it all. This is what we're doing. This is why. There's nothing to hide. This is our tactic. This is what we do. We enforce pluralism when secularism becomes a fantasy.
But I mean, thank you so much for all of that information. Literally, satanic law school. Wow. Wow. I mean, I understand these cases a little bit even more thoroughly than I did just reading newsletters and articles about them. So thank you. I will end this before we go into two a little bit longer general religious law questions, but I will end on, in your opinion, when the temple loses a case, even ones that are as important as these, separate from financial losses, do you think that we in a way gain something by losing? There's definitely a tension that's brought to the loss of a case, and why. So do you think that, what do you think that balance is between, losing and winning something whenever the temple loses to the state?
It's about the fight. It's not about the win. We're going to, like I said, we're going to keep beating our head again until we get through. It might be 5 generations of attorneys down the road. I don't know. Maybe the whole thing collapses, but we have to fight the fight. We put our money where our mouth is, and that's what's important, So I think with every fight, there's more exposed to what's going on out there.
Yeah.
There's more municipalities that are going to take us seriously. In fact, I saw a news article in another city in Arizona, without us touching it, they were starting an invocation program, and a reporter asked them, what are you going to do when the Satanic Temple comes? And we had nothing to do with it. We never talked to anybody or anything. And that has to do with our president. And that's based on a case we've lost.
Yeah.
So eventually, when we start winning, they're going to think twice before they pass these essentially laws that favor one religion over another. They're going to consider us. They're going to be like, we cost Scottsdale $300,000 with that lawsuit.
Wow.
Does a small community want to pay that because violating some dude black t-shirts religious liberty? Is that what they want to do? And it's the more we do this, the more we build this culture in this community, and the more we fight, eventually they're going to keep us in mind. And they're not going to pass these laws, or they're going to let us participate, and then we don't have to sue anyone. Wouldn't that be great?
Yeah.
The fucking utopia.
All right. No, thank you so much. As it pertains to TST litigation cases, that was extremely enlightening. I'd like to have you back on to talk more about them in detail in the future. So these are just after we kind of got our stuff together and figured out specifically like what we wanted to ask you about, just some general religious law and religious freedom questions that we generated. Is there any danger within the concept of religious freedom as a protected right? Does the legal fight for freedom of religious practices open the gates for abusive theocratic traditions to go unchecked? For example, would the recent temple's legal abortion ritual open the door for rituals like Christian or Islamic executions, mutilations to be protected under constitutional freedom of religion?
No, and this goes back to some rulings that, religious liberty can't go to the point of violating the law. Mm-hmm. So you can't make a law to make their free exercise legal, but you can't violate criminal law for your religious liberty. Now, this was heavily litigated with Native American practices with peyote. Peyote is a substance. It was part of the religious liberty ritual, as I'll call it. And eventually they won that, but that was very narrow. And that was the only case that I can think of where that actually happened. Now you've got the Babaluai case where there was Santeria, they were practicing the sacrifice of animals. They made an ordinance in that city saying you can't sacrifice animals. And they said, well, you can't make a law to prohibit their religious rights, right? There's two cases. There's two narrow exceptions where this happened. But when you get more extreme, so to speak, they're not going to allow that to happen. You can't violate criminal law, especially in an egregious way, for your religious practice. So there is a balance to maintain, and that's what the oaths here in law. There's a balance to maintain. That's how everything is. But no, I don't think it's in danger of some of these more extreme things. That's not a thing.
Okay. All right. No, great. Great. That's exactly, that's exactly what we wanted to ask. And that's the feedback that we wanted. Good. So what do you think about the potential splintering of states on the grounds of religion? Do you see states like, as another example, like Mormon-dominated Utah becoming more common, and therein becoming like more independent and theocratic in governance, ignoring legal separations of church and state in the future?
No, I think the Mormons got in on that very early on, and there was kind of this appeasement of them. Because of their horrible treatment of the Mormons back east, where they actually fled to Utah, they were kind of left alone because they faced horrible atrocities. I think St. Louis actually, and I think that proliferation of Mormonism was because they fled there for protection to get away from. I think chances of anything like that happening again are slim to none. First of all, people are flocking away from church. They're not gaining members. The pews are being emptied. And I think that's whether we exist or not. Documentary series that I loved on Netflix called Wild Country with Osho. Did any of you watch that documentary? No,
not yet. I've definitely gone past it a few times before passing out.
The one that happened, the true story, is they founded their own town with their own police force and all this stuff run by the church, and they were actually sued successfully, saying you can't establish a religion. Ironically, it went far the other way. So yeah, I mean, I just don't think. I think it's going the opposite way. I don't think it's going to be more this. I think it's going to be less like this. And I think the reason these theocrats get so much attention is sensationalism, and the reason it's sensational is because it's wild. Trying to charge women with murder or abortions, like this crazy shit that I know is unconstitutional, so wacky that we hear about it constantly. So I think it seems a bigger problem than it is in a certain way. But these little things, these invocations and this kind of like slow creep that we got to kind of step back. But as far as like these bigger issues of entire cities being theocratic and stuff, I think no.
No. Okay.
All right, y'all. What a fucking show. This has been fucking awesome. I can't thank you all enough for being here, for, members of the Goat Farm reaching out with some questions. Dennis, Veronica, Al, Johnny, put a lot of input into this. And of course, you Stu for, stopping by study hall and spending some time in class. This has been fucking great.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. And as these things move along, I'm happy to come back and talk about it.
For sure.
Perfect.
Thank you for coming.
And now, one thing we always do is we just want to, do some quick shout outs and thank you. So as always, we want to shout out to our entire online listening community and just listening community in general. We would not be here without the support of all the degenerates and heathens that check us out every time we launch a new episode. I want to thank Sean from Happy Cat Designs, who's really working hard on putting together our new line of merchandise, which we are calling Satanic Study Hall, the Varsity Collection. Ooh. Lots of cool shit, narrowed down the focus, and I'm gonna say it, fuck Teespring. I've done my research. They're enablers to a bunch of bullshit, and we're gonna spend our money locally and support small business. And
support small businesses. Everybody, don't forget it.
And that's just what Sean's going to do. Shout out to Misty's Coventry. That's MHISTYS Coventry. That's mistyscoventry.com. And mistyscoventry.com, you can find a whole bunch of cool occult gifts and whatnot. I recommend searching them on social media, specifically Facebook and maybe even eBay. Misty's Coventry just launched some really cool Baphomet plushes. There's some Baphomet kitten plushes. Really fucking good stuff. Love Sean. Sean's been a supporter of the podcast from the very beginning. So hail Satan, Sean. We love everybody in Misty's Coventry. Of course, Dark Art Depository. DarkArtDepository.com is where you can find all the latest designs and creations made by Rhett. Rhett is featured on Normie Satanism too, and gave our listeners some insight in regards to how he comes up with his designs, what art means to him, and what Normie Satanism means to him. So if you haven't checked that out, he's got a good little interview in Normie Satanism Part 2. Our friends over at Love City Satanists and Friends of Philadelphia, always on to some good shit. So all right, I will kind of open the floor. Dennis, Veronica, any other last and final thoughts before the bell rings?
Thank you so much, Stu, for coming. Just again, thank you so much to everybody you shout out for their support. Thank you to everybody in this community who is being as innovative as they are, including our listeners, to, keep up with their businesses, keep up with their art. And thank you so much, Stu and the Satanic Temple, to keep up as hard as you are with these cases, because, as we just discussed, it's very important to keep fighting for the separation of church and state, no matter where these issues crop up. And I feel hell of a lot more educated in terms of the litigation aspect of the temple. I've been on quite a journey, as the boys well know, and I suck up every piece of information possible. I court communities before joining them. This is, I consider it, if not another step towards it, just another really important component of what I have to learn. So thank you so much, Stu.
Yeah, my pleasure.
All right, Dennis, it's all you. What you got, brother?
I definitely wanted to first start off with Stu. Thank you very much, man, for coming on. I really enjoyed this episode. Just like Veronica said, I feel much more, informed and educated on everything that's going on, the inner workings of the temple and all of that. Definitely want to give a shout out to our fans. Of course, a shout out to Joe and Manaz for our Dungeons and Dragons game. I'm waiting for more people to jump in. So that is still open for anybody who wants to play.
All right, y'all. It has been an awesome and informative day in Satanic Study Hall, I guess, legal edition. Dun dun. Again, you've all been fucking awesome. I love you. I love all you listeners out there. Thanks for keeping us going, and we will see y'all next time. Hail Satan.
Hail Satan.
Class is dismissed.